All right. Man, this never happens. Never happens. So I want to apologize for those who were just watching the last live stream. Thank you for watching. We're going to spin the block, all right? We're going to spin the block back and do this again. What happened was my son, I gave him some headphones that were mine, and sometimes my computer connects to his headphones, and so he was doing them. I guess he put them in his ear and all, and it connected to his, and I didn't have a microphone. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. I looked in the chat, and everyone was like, we can't hear you. All right, let's do this again. I'll try to be quicker this time. All right. So we're going to watch. I want to give some brief thoughts. Stephen A. Smith did a interview with Ben Shapiro yesterday, and I thought it was terrible. I thought it was a terrible interview. I really did. I thought it was a terrible interview. And so I thought Stephen A. Smith, this bold guy who says all this stuff, he looked like he was pining to Ben Shapiro on one level. They were both civil, which I thought was cool. But I just thought, these guys are both smarter than me, presumably. And so as I watched this video, and it's basically Ben Shapiro has publicly been going on a campaign to free Derek Chauvin. I talked about this last week and why I thought this was a problem, okay? And then Stephen A. kind of had a rebuttal for that, and they criticized each other publicly until he comes on his show. And I want you to listen to a portion of this conversation, and I just want to give some feedback. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. All right? Hopefully, the sound will not mess up again. That was very frustrating to try to figure out what was happening live. All right? So I'm sorry for those of you that were watching. Let's get to it. Stephen A. Smith, Ben Shapiro. I'm going to give you some thoughts based on this conversation. Here we go.
Thing to do with race. And so the kind of idea that let's put it this way, if race is a barrier to logic, then race is the problem, not the solution. Right? Let me ask you this. I mean, if you looked at, you said before that you didn't look at the autopsy report, you're not taking a lot of time looking at the evidence or the autopsy.
Let me just make sure you understand what Ben Shapiro just said. If race is a barrier to logic, then it's part of the problem. Like, I appreciate, let me tell you the general problem with this conversation that I saw. Was it so much of it is idealistic. It's like, this is how it should be, but we have to live in the world of how it is. Now, if you're a believer, we're trying to live according to what God says reality is, not our own, right? But the problem is, if we're a believer, we're trying to do that, okay? If you're not a believer, then this is the real world. And the real world does not work in idealistic how it should be, right? So Ben Shapiro's statement about if race were not this or that, that's not real, because the whole country, America's complete founding, has to do with race, whether you like it or not, right? Whether you like it or not. It has to do with race. And just like Ben Shapiro, his worldview has to do with being Jewish. So when things happen to the Jews, I've never seen Ben Shapiro ever say anything critical or negative or give anyone the benefit of the doubt who disagrees with the Jews. But that's not woke. When you're black, it's woke. Why isn't it Jew woke for him, right? I'm being facetious for a reason. Everyone does this. But in America, we pigeonhole it because black and white, the interpersonal relationships between black and white people and the foundation of racism that it was built on in America is the longest cry. It's the longest cry, and so people are tired of hearing it. But this is what I love about God. God does not say that happened a long time ago. God says that happened, and we're going to deal with that. You're going to answer for that. That's what I love about the Lord. But so I think the problem we have is that, there is going to be logic is going to be blocked by race because that's American history. And no matter how much we try to say it doesn't exist still, it's just not fundamentally true, because racism isn't something you can legislate or de-legislate. It's in the heart. This is a heart problem. And until the hearts of everyone changes, of course there's going to be remnants of that, right? But that's not the point I wanted to talk about. I'm just making a case right now. Here's coming up my first real point. All right, here we go.
What would it take for you to change your mind on the case, or is there nothing that could change your mind on the case because you saw the tape, for example?
Well,
it wouldn't take much, and this is why I said this, because normally I would look at the autopsy reports or whatever. And I saw people bringing up his arrest record. I saw people bringing up fentanyl in the system. I saw all of these things, and all I could come to, Ben, fair or unfair, was that none of that matters if he wasn't on the ground with a knee on the back of his neck for 9+ minutes. Because I'm looking at a trained police officer who should know better. I looked at the experts who were saying, with their trade, there was no reason, and you saw it, I'm sure you saw this, and not to say that you would embrace it with the level of sincerity that others may, because I know the level of skepticism that you look at when you see the news outlets, and by the way, I don't blame you. I'm with you on that, okay? But I would say to you, listening to experts talk about how police officers are trained and pointing to the fact that Derek Chauvin had no business being in that position and putting George Floyd in that position, particularly once he was handcuffed and contained. To me, that, along with the ultimate outcome, is all the evidence I need. And that's where we might differ.
I mean, that's totally.
So here's where it's clear to me that Stephen A. Smith doesn't understand the law, the case that well at all. And this may be a good moment for him. This may be a good humbling moment for him. Everything he said, he played right into Ben Shapiro's hand, if you ask me. And he didn't, as sharp as Stephen A. Smith appears to be, maybe it's athletics only. I don't know him well enough to know, but I was like, wow, you're missing some. So in this segment, when he said how police officers are trained, I thought he was going to highlight that, knowing that the Minnesota police officers were in fact trained to put their knees on people's backs. When me and Strack were doing cross-examine, we had a guy who was he works for the DOD now, but he was a Philadelphia police officer, and he said in his police academy there were 2 black officers, him and another guy, and 19 other officers that were white. And they said all of the training videos were showing black men being aggressive and essentially teaching the law enforcement how to be aggressive towards black men. White people weren't in those videos. And I think sometimes, you create the dynamic. And I remember this guy was saying there were times he and the other officer would look at each other because they felt like, wow, this is giving these young black men like a bad rap, because like white people go off on police. White people, they just crash out. I've watched police run from white people. They're shooter, but I fear for my life. You know why they fear for their life a lot of times? Because they were initially trained to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying black people don't be wilding. And there are times, if I was an officer, I would have took somebody's life too at times, right? That's real. I get it. It's a real world. But I think the way that you train these officers already is you're allowed to be. You should expect to be aggressive. This is in the training. This isn't just, this is before you get a beat, before you go out in the street. Most of the training, and I've heard this from multiple officers, the majority of the training videos were aggressive black men and how to subdue and all that. White people we're all sinful. They're aggressive. Latinos are aggressive. I guess if you're in a Latino area, the videos are going to be them. But this is what these black, and I've heard this on multiple occasions. So I thought Stephen A. was going to go there, like, what? But that's not where he went. He went right into Ben Shapiro's hands, and Ben Shapiro said this, coming back, which he sounded like he had an aha moment, but I think we're going to see you actually put your foot in your mouth, Mr. Shapiro, but I could be wrong. Here we go.
Totally fair if we differ on that. I guess the question I would ask you is, given the fact that that was a Minneapolis Police Department trained protocol, given the fact that Floyd did ask to be removed from the car, I mean, in the lead up to the situation, the part of the tape that nobody watches, he was actually outside the car. The police officers move him inside the car. He says he's claustrophobic, and then he claims 6 consecutive times that he cannot breathe while he's in the car. So if the idea is that it was the police officer's knee that deprives him of breath, he was already claiming that he couldn't breathe inside the car, suggesting he was already in the middle of some sort of medical event, right? And then he was brought outside the car. I guess the question that I have for you, again, is what level of evidence would need to be shown for you to get to reasonable doubt? I mean, you seem incredibly certain, right? All I'm saying is that the reasonable doubt standard is what pertains in criminal justice. What would it take to get you to reasonable doubt? Or is there no reasonable doubt that could be achieved simply by dint of the fact that he had his knee on his neck? By the way, it's not for the full 9 minutes. There are minutes where it's on his back. I mean, even the prosecution acknowledged.
All right, so Ben Shapiro's basically saying this, and I want to say this before it goes too far, because here's my first, I have a question then. So Ben Shapiro said this at the beginning of this clip, after he said, what would it take for you to see that there's the difference, right? Ben Shapiro says this, that first of all, it was Minnesota police law that was their training to do that. The knee on the back it was part of the training. But then Ben Shapiro said that George Floyd the part of the tape that nobody looks at. So I'm glad he said that. He said the part of the tape nobody looks at was that George Floyd was outside of the car. Police put him in the car, and then he said, I'm claustrophobic, I can't breathe. And then Ben Shapiro said, he said 6 times in the car, I can't breathe. And so they took him out of the car, all right? So, and Ben Shapiro didn't say anything else about that after that. So let me make sure you understand what he just said. You just watched it. He said George Floyd, they put him in the car. He said he was claustrophobic and couldn't breathe. Said 6 times in the car, I can't breathe. And Ben Shapiro said, indicating that there was something going on with his ability to breathe already. So they took him out of the car, right? Because he said he couldn't breathe. That's what they did. Okay, Ben Shapiro said that, right? They took him out of the car. And then so Ben Shapiro's conclusion is that because George Floyd said he couldn't breathe, prior to Derek Chauvin's knee being on his back or his neck, then he already had a medical issue happening, so that wasn't the result of Derek Chauvin's knee. This is the logic of Ben Shapiro. This is what he's saying. So here's my question, Mr. Shapiro, and everyone who agrees with this position. These are his own words. He said this. Here's my question, then. Why would the police take George Floyd out of the car because he can't breathe, right? He said he can't breathe, so they take him out of the police car because he can't breathe. If that was true, then why wouldn't Derek Chauvin get off of his back when he said he can't breathe, when you're laying him down on the concrete with 3 other officers holding his legs down? Why wouldn't he get off? It wasn't like he wasn't subdued on some level. So, and keep in mind, when you're on fentanyl, it's not like you're the sharpest, right? So if you're already on drugs, it's not like you're popping superhuman drugs where you're super strong. Like you're already just like not even on your best thinking ability. You got 3 officers holding your leg. You got one guy, an Asian officer who was right there, and Derek Chauvin with his knee on his back. You took him out because he couldn't breathe in the car, but you ignored it when he was laying on the ground and said, I can't breathe. If you took him out because he couldn't breathe in the car, then why wouldn't you get off his knee when he says he can't breathe when you're on the ground? Because it's one thing to say I can't breathe. Okay, you took him out, but now you have your knee pressing against his back against concrete. That's not claustrophobic. In the car, people are claustrophobic. That could be a real thing. That was claustrophobic. But on the street, that's not claustrophobic. Now the ground, which is not going to move or bend, is pressing up against his chest because your knee is pressing down on the ground. So if you got out of the car because you wanted to make sure he could breathe in the back of the squad car, then why wouldn't you get off when you're on his back? That doesn't make sense to me. So I don't even know why Ben Shapiro's bringing that up as if that's like a logical thing. That doesn't even make sense. But there's more. There's more. Let's keep going a little bit more. Let's go. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's Maybelline. All right. Here we go. Next couple segments. One or two other thoughts I had. Here we go.
Is that the real question is, I think, the last 50 seconds, right? The last 50 seconds of the tape where Floyd stops breathing and Chauvin's knee is still on his neck. That is really the question as to whether this goes into criminal charge territory. Okay. Otherwise, he ends up being in a position where he's actually just using a typical subdual technique before you put the guy back in the car and you take him off to jail.
And I'm saying, to answer your question, there's absolutely nothing that could convince me that Derek Chauvin deserved a different outcome because of what you just articulated, what we saw, even if it's for the last 50 seconds. I'm not changing my position. I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, this is a real question. Do you think so? We've talked about race a little bit. Do you think that Chauvin was a racist? This is a race-based crime, in your view?
Do I believe that?
Yes.
I don't believe that based on anything about his history that they articulated, because I know how people conjure up evidence to go at it. I do believe his actions indicated that, because I didn't see him doing that with anybody else. And the times that we were living in and the climate, as you articulated accurately, I might add, the heightened level of sensitivity that it exists because of brutality on the part of some police officers. By the way, I never say police brutality because I don't like to castigate all police officers that way.
Okay. So Ben Shapiro wants to set the trap. Like, do you think Derek Chauvin is racist? That's the whole angle. It's funny because at this moment, Ben Shapiro called Stephen A. race baiter, right? And they were going back and forth. So Stephen A. brought him on because he thinks he's not race baiting. So Ben Shapiro brings up, do you think he's a racist, right? Stephen A. shoots back, well, not based on his history and all of that. Here's the problem with that question, right? This isn't about whether he was a racist or not. This is about, was it excessive? It doesn't matter. Now, here's the reality. This is what I mean about living in an ideal world versus reality. The reality is black and white people, like Ben Shapiro makes a point later in this video that, it gets blown up when it's a white person on a black person versus, but you know why it gets blown up? Because that dynamic has more historical weight to it, and that dynamic will get ratings. Shapiro's acting like he doesn't understand that media is about money. It's not just about controlling a narrative. Let me tell you, the reason why legacy media was covering all these, legacy media didn't catch any of these videos live. Most of the videos of kids, black people, whoever, being killed were not from police cams, they were from cell phones. People were filming this on their own, all right? The reason why legacy media covered it was because it was getting news. This was around the COVID, we were locked in. Everyone was trying to get what stories are. Listen, if grandmothers making Kool-Aid and skinning their cat's back left leg would have been what everybody wanted, guess what media would have showed? Because they don't care about the narrative more than they do the bottom line. Every media company, including Daily Wire, might I add, has stockholders who invest money in the success of the business, and they need to make money for them as well. Otherwise, your stock is going to drop. People are going to sell. So media, legacy media, whether you call it leftist or not, they still want to be the network that gets everyone to watch their videos, right? That's why this was everywhere. The reality is white on white crime does not have a history. Even black on black crime. If it was you know why? Black on black crime only is lucrative in rap music or in gangster rap. No one cares if black people kill each other apart from that. No one cares. But when a white person of course, because there's a historical legacy and we all know it, so we're dialed in. In the same way, right? If there was a heavyweight boxing match between a Jewish dude and a German champion, right? I promise you the whole world would watch that fighting match. You know why? Because there is a historical legacy of conflict between Jews and Germans. It shaped world history, right? You can't deny that. For Ben Shapiro to even insinuate, conservatives in general, that it's just a leftist narrative. Are you kidding me? There is the black versus white narrative in America changed the world. It shaped the world, right? Because we were supposed to be the nation that stood up for Christ. So of course it's going to draw more attention than white on white crime or black on black crime or Jew on Jew crime. No, Jews versus Germans is a history even greater than Jews, Palestinians. But even if it was a Jew in a Palestinian boxing match, a lot of people will watch it because we know there's more behind that than just a couple of boxers. It's so interesting that Ben Shapiro acts like this is just leftist media, and that's all it is, that there's no historical legacy that makes us watch it, right? Makes us watch it. Of course it is. Even now, when you watch a movie where the lead character is black and his white and the girl is white, it still can make people be like, why are they showing that, But you don't do that when it's an Indian or white or Asian white because there's no legacy. There's no history there of conflict. People are black and versus white racism or whatever it is the Lakers versus Celtics of race relations in America. There's no other America. So whenever that's the case, and especially when it's a white person in power versus a black person, of course we're going to look at it. And of course we're going to have an opinion. Just like Ben Shapiro has an opinion when something happens to the Jews and he quickly says anti-Semitic. You called Candace Owens anti-Semitic, but you unleashed her to talk about black people. She said this. Candace Owens said that she was encouraged to be the bulldog towards black people. But when they talked about Jews, we got to get her up out of here. Stop it. Like my whole thing is like, look, it ain't even about like, oh, you're a left. I'm about integrity. Just say what it is, man. You don't call it woke unless you're Jew woke. When it comes to the Jewish people, you will speak up. And then I'm wrong with that. I'm not even saying it's wrong, but don't be hypocritical. Don't be hypocritical. Don't pretend like everything was fine and then the left created this narrative. No, it wasn't. There is a historical legacy. And let me tell you something. If we're being honest, right? If we're just being honest, what Ben Shapiro is describing that happened with George Floyd, guess who else? You know what else that happened? You know who that happened to back in the day? OJ. Listen, fam. When OJ was found not guilty for the unaliving of Nicole Brown Smith, his ex-wife or estranged wife, black people celebrated not because they thought he was innocent, but because there's a historical legacy of black people being railroaded. Just because you think it's woke doesn't mean it's not history. And it doesn't mean people have forgotten it and don't see a mosaic. We gotta be honest. We can't live in an idealistic world. Now, if we're Christians, we have to live with a certain worldview. Our identity is I'm a believer, I'm a Christian first, I'm not a black man first. That's not my primary identity. But let's not pretend like I'm supposed to just act like that doesn't matter and I just... No, we don't live in an ideal world. That's not reality. But when OJ, remember when OJ, white people were upset. They were upset, right? Just like in 2017 when Trump won and the white dudes, the alt-right was like, the Jews will not replace us. They was marching down Charlottesville and one of them killed a couple of people by driving a car in. That's the reality. We live in a culture where that is the reality, right? White people propagating race is going to make news. Black people, not so much, right? Unless it's rap music. If we kill each other in rap, we can make millions of dollars. If we do it in our videos in the streets, nobody cares about that. Ben Shapiro doesn't cover black on black crime. They only use black people unaliving their children to make a political point, not because you care about people. So my whole thing is like, what's that Michael Jordan gift, man? Stop it. Get some help, right? When OJ was found not guilty, white people were livid. Black people would celebrate good time. Only because he beat the case. But then later on, OJ caught a robbery charge and got smoked. He got 33 years. And a lot of people said that was get back for him getting off before. In fact, let me prove that. This is just history. This is just history. Don't be mad at me. This is history, right? Here's what it says right here. Look at this. It says this: O.J. Simpson's acquittal in the 1995 murder trial has significant impact on his later trial for armed robbery and kidnapping in Las Vegas. Here's some key ways the acquittal influenced the later trial. Number one, public perception and bias. Now, in the video with Ben Shapiro, let me say this real quick, because we're not going to watch any more of it. You can go back and watch it if you want to see it. Ben Shapiro said that the trial was essentially a sham trial because the Minnesota jury, it was basically, he said, the most watched trial since OJ. This is what made me go back and remember the OJ trial and what happened. And he's right, I think it was. But it wasn't, this is what people don't realize, and this is what I mean, right? It wasn't about George Floyd, though. No one, let me be clear. This is going to sound harsher than I mean it to, but I'm trying to make a point. But this is what I mean. No one really cared about George Floyd but his family. George Floyd represented a martyr. George Floyd represented the culmination of a lot of frustration. Most of the people that marched in the street did not destroy buildings. They did not say like, we're Marxists, we stand with Karl Marx. They didn't do that. Most of the people that marched, white or black, don't even know who Man, they thought Karl Marx. Listen, I thought when people called me a Marxist, because I thought they were talking one of the, you know, the Marx brothers. Remember them, the three dudes that were like the Three Stooges? It was Groucho Marx and all. Man, I thought they were talking about them. I was like, what you calling me one of them for? I didn't even know that Karl Marx was a real dude. And they was calling you cultural Marxist. Nobody in the streets was marching because of Karl Marx and Marxism. They weren't even thinking about that. They were marching because when they saw George Floyd die, they connected the dots to a history of seemingly and both proven mistreatment towards black people, from slavery to the injustice of the criminal law system in the 20th century, vagrancy laws, locking black people up for not having ID and jaywalk. People saw it. They see the mosaic. You can't escape it. We can't celebrate American history like it's Independence Day. We freed ourselves from Britain, but then 100 years later, you still have people showing economic sanctions. So people don't forget, like, you can't make people only celebrate what you want them to, right? This is just the reality. You call it woke if you want. It's just American history. Some people still feel some type of way. So when all that was happening, most of the people marching the street, when they saw George Floyd die, including Ben Shapiro initially, it looked like, wow. And people just got tired of it. It had been 6 years of multiple cases of black men seemingly killed unnecessarily by police. Not every situation, but some of them, right? That's just the reality. George Floyd, no one was really about George Floyd. He represented a deeper hurt and pain for people. He represented, they didn't march for Tamir. That was a 13-year-old boy with a toy gun. He shouldn't have been killed by police. But that was, so there was a lot of things that happened where it was like, man. So even Ben Shapiro brings up that the Mike Brown thing was like, hey, people thought he had his hands up and was shot in the back by police, and then it was clear that it was wrong, and it was proven that it wasn't true. And he said, people still carry their hands up, don't shoot. This is where Ben Shapiro misses it. Ben Shapiro, why do you call people anti-Semitic if they disagree? You know why? Because anti-Semitism has a long history. There is a legitimate hatred towards Jewish people that is sinful. I mean, if you're Reformed, Martin Luther hated the Jews. And people talk about Martin Luther like he's everything. That dude might not have made it into the kingdom. Don't think because he had good theology that he made it. Them people in Matthew 7 said, Lord, didn't we cast out demons in your name? And they forgot, yeah, in my name casted out the demons, not you. My name can make the devil run, not you. The devil ain't scared of us. The devil ain't scared of no human beings. He might be people who got the spirit and who really love the Lord. He might be, ooh, the spirit's in them, I can't do nothing with them. But it's the spirit in us, not us, right? Like these people don't even know Martin Luther made it to heaven, but they got shirts and you don't even know that, right? The reality is like most of the people that saw George Floyd and reacted that way, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. They're talking like we thought George Floyd was a hero and we're ignoring his criminal record. No, but you ignore all the criminal record of the white people in the South. Like it's the same thing. You let these people who are technically the North and the South, the Civil War, Robert E. Lee and them, they are traitors to the American way of life, the American cause, states' rights. It was slavery, but yet they have their own holidays. They have army bases. They got monuments. Stone Mountain, Georgia has a big monument of Robert E. Lee and then people who were racist that wanted black people to stay slaves. Or they were Democrats. I don't care. They shouldn't have a mural in America. And do you know in Europe, it's a mandatory 5-year prison sentence if you brandish a swastika. They make their children go to Holocaust campsites, gravesites, because they want them to learn from their mistakes. In America, we make everything the First Amendment freedom, so you can be a Ku Klux Klan, march down the street in D.C. and be protected. You can't do that. You can't march with no swastikas in Europe. They get it. They get it. George Floyd, nobody cared about George Floyd, but his family. George Floyd represented the straw that broke the camel's back. And white people know because they got OJ. That's what white people have. They have OJ. But guess what? When OJ got caught for that robbery, let's go back to that. He got smoked. Look at this joint. It says the public perception and bias. The same thing that Ben Shapiro said about why he really thinks Derek Chauvin got charged. Listen to this. It says the acquittal in the murder case created widespread public skepticism about Simpson's innocence. This perception likely influenced the public's view of his guilt in the later robbery case, potentially affecting the jury's mindset as well. Many believe that Simpson had gotten away with murder, which could have contributed to a desire for justice and the substance. Man, everybody was saying this. He got 33 years. He got out on parole 10 years later, but still he got smoked for a robbery. Like most people don't get, but everyone said, oh, look, legal strategy and jury selection. In the robbery trial, Simpson's defense attorney Defense team faced challenges in addressing potential biases among jurors due to his infamous past. The court restricted voir dire questioning about Simpson's California cases, which his lawyers argued hindered their ability to ensure a fair trial. Third, some legal experts argue that Simpson received a harsher sentence for the robbery than a typical defendant would have, partly due to his notoriety and the perception that he had evaded justice in the past. Ben Shapiro, this is the American justice system. Let's live in reality and not in ideals. Sure, that happens. But here's the other reality, right? And here's what I think we have to remember. And this is just, do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Like, so even if you thought, man, Derek Chauvin was shafted, let's just say you actually thought that Derek Chauvin got shafted. Here's the problem. And, well, it's not a problem, but here are the facts. Facts don't care about your feelings, according to Ben Shapiro, all right? Now, he makes it seem like the evidence clearly showed that. That's not the case. But I'm not even here to debate. I don't even care if the evidence did. Here's another reality. Look at this. I said this in my video before. Sometimes, just like OJ, I think OJ got for what he did in the past, and that Derek Chauvin got. Look at, I said this before in the last video. Look at this. Chauvin had 18 complaints on his official record during his career with the Minneapolis Police Department, with only two of those 18 complaints resulting in discipline, letters of reprimand. Listen, I have friends, I have people that are members of my church. I'm their pastor. They're friends of mine. I love them. They're cops. I just counseled an officer and his wife today. I have no beef with police officers. I don't like all of them because I think they're sinful like everybody else, and they do some wild stuff, and I've been a recipient of it at times. But I understand that they also have a difficult job, and they're under a high-stress situation. There are not many jobs in this country where you're in life or death situations per almost every call. They don't get the psychological impact that a cop has to go through every day, especially if you're in a high crime, high violent neighborhood. I think people dismiss it like you're supposed to just be cool all the time. Like, hey man, we're here to protect and serve. Yeah, I'm gonna protect my life too though. I understand that, right? I get it. But they have all said in different ways, shape, or forms that, you know, when you know you're not going to get reprimanded, you kind of go hard. I remember when Freddie Gray got killed in Baltimore, there were police officers saying that they know what neighborhoods to harass kids in. I mean, it's all anecdotal because I'm saying it, but this is all documented, right? They know it. Derek Chauvin had 18 complaints, right? 18, and only 2 of them resulted in letters of reprimand. Some sources indicate he had at least 22 complaints or internal investigation during his more than 19 years in the department. Now look at this. I'm gonna skip down. Look at 2017. He restrained a 14-year-old boy for several minutes, using his knee on the boy's back and hitting him with a flashlight. A 2020 incident involving Patty Day, months before George Floyd's death, resulted in a federal lawsuit. Chauvin allegedly used excessive force by throwing Day to the ground, this is a woman, Patty Day, to the ground, and pressing his knee into her back while she was handcuffed. Since 2015, Chauvin is reportedly on record for kneeling on people's necks and or putting them in chokeholds at least 6 times. That's why he got locked up, because you at some point is good. What did Paris once say? Love's gonna get you. Love's gonna get you. Love's gonna get you. What does Scripture say? Do not be deceived. I think he got smoked because he got away with a lot of stuff. Let me just prove this to you. I've been a pastor on July 1st. I've been a pastor 17 years at my church. 17 years, right? I have not had even close to 22 complaints against me that require any investigation. I don't even know if people have really brought a charge against me as an elder. They didn't like a decision, or there were preferences and expectations, sure. But rarely has anyone come to me with a real charge against them, right? and I'm not saying I'm sinless, I'm just saying 17 years, right? If you're a parent or a spouse, and you take your wife to the hospital, she needs a procedure, or your loved one, whoever it is, right? Your loved one. And you're told, hey, we got a doctor who's been doing this for 22 years. He's going to do the surgery. You're like, great, because you're thinking great. And then you find out, no, they've been doing it for 19 years. Then you find out later that doctor has 22 complaints registered against them for the way that they did surgery and treated people that were in surgery, and only got 2 letters of reprimand. Would you let that doctor operate on your child, husband, wife, even your pet? Would you let that happen? No, you would not. You would not. Ben Shapiro would not. You would be like, you know what? I want to get another doctor in. No. He only got 2 letters of reprimand. No. I'm sorry. I'm not. In any other situation, you would be like, no. But Ben Shapiro's acting like this dude, the only thing he did was put his knee on this woman's back, on this man's back. When a couple months prior, he got in a federal case for doing it to a woman named Patty Day. And then again, 6 times, knee on the back or a chokehold. Those are all taught by Minnesota law. That doesn't mean you should do them. I think Derek Chauvin got smoked because he was an evil cop for real. And even if you think he was innocent in George Floyd, he wasn't on all them cases. But guess what happened to him? Nothing. So he got smoked. I think OJ unalived Nicole Brown Smith. He got away with it. But guess what happened to him later? He got smoked. That's what happens. So I'm just not going for it. I'm not going for it. It is what it is. I'm sure I'm wrong in it. I'm just saying, I think sometimes you get away with one thing, but you get caught for another. And I think that's what happened. So even if you thought I don't think Derek Chauvin was in it. I think this is what I think happened. Derek Chauvin was used to putting his knee on people's back and knows he's not going to get in trouble for it. You know you're not going to get in trouble for it. Now, everyone has a different opinion on spanking children, but let me tell you what happens. If you don't discipline your kids, and your kids, they're going to grow up thinking they can get away with anything. And you know what happens to them? What do we call them when they grow up? Spoiled brats, right? There's no consequences. You become a spoiled brat. The Bible, the biblical position, Hebrews 12 said God disciplines those that he loves as sons. Said, if God doesn't discipline you, then he doesn't love you as a son. He said, earthly fathers have disciplined us and we've understood it and loved them for it. How much more does our heavenly Father discipline us? And he says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but rather painful, but it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness with those who've been trained up under it. The biblical position is that there are consequences. Derek Chauvin had no consequences for 19 years. He did whatever he wanted, and I think that's why he could have his knee on his back while this man was saying, even if you thought, all right, let me take my knee off. He's not even talking anymore. Let me at least do that. That's what Stephen A. was trying to get at, but I thought he articulated his point very terribly. Stephen A. better tighten up if he's going to have people like Ben Shapiro on. I could have done a much better job than that, but what do I know? What do I know? Like and subscribe or don't. Grace and peace. See you on the next video.